Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, and if you've been following along on the channel, you'll likely know just how important Canada's new federal budget is going to be. Now, when many people hear federal budget, they're going to think, isn't that just a list of some boring numbers about how much Canada's planning on spending? Well, yes and no, because while this does list what Canada is going to spend its money on, it also shows their priorities on what kind of benefits and programs and changes to the social fabric of the country are planned by the government. And it's applicable to absolutely every single Canadian, because this determines what kind of jobs the government is going to support and what kind of sectors they're going to focus on, as well as what childcare benefits people are going to be able to access and what other sort of supplements for people's income are going to be available in the future. This is important for everybody. And I think we might have just found some hints as to what is going to be included in this budget and how your life could change because of it in the future. You'll remember just yesterday on the channel, we talked about the new website that the Government of Canada just launched called Let's Talk Budget 2021. And the whole point of the website is to get opinions from Canadians like you about what should happen in the country moving forward and what Canada should prioritize spending money on. But what's actually most interesting here is that they've included a questionnaire with many multiple choice questions for people to sort of scroll through and click on what's most important to them. And if you look at these individual multiple choice answers that they're allowing you to click on, we can sort of get a better idea of what they're actually planning to put in the budget, because that's what they're allowing you to choose from. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the actual questionnaire where the Government of Canada is asking us what's most important to us so that they can accurately include these things in the next budget. But if we scroll down here, you'll notice that they have a number of different multiple choice questions, all with pre-planned answers for you to choose from. And this is where we can start getting some insight on what they actually have planned and what is likely to come down the pipeline. Let's take a closer look at these questions and what answers they're allowing you to select. So the first question that you can see here is, what investment do you think would best create jobs and grow the economy? And you're allowed to select up to 3. There's helping Canadians train for new opportunities, helping small businesses grow by making it easier to get loans, investing in early learning and childcare, investing to regain jobs in industries hardest hit by the pandemic, hospitality, tourism, arts and culture, also investing in communities through public transit, affordable housing, and green infrastructure, supporting small and medium-sized businesses to adopt digital technologies and be more competitive. And if we clear all this up and go down, we can see the other ones. For young people worried about entering a weak job market, they can increase support through apprenticeship opportunities, and co-op placements and internships. They can invest in broadband to improve Canadians' access to high-speed internet, invest in technologies to accelerate Canada's green transformation, or some other things. So obviously that's a lot to think about, but when we look at each individual answer, we get a better idea of what's actually on the table and what they might actually implement in the future. I'll give you an example. So if they see that a ton of people select this option, helping small businesses grow by making it easier to get loans, then we could see federal Canadian policy come in that allows people who maybe have not as good of a credit score or are unable to get a loan in typical situations to start a business. Maybe they'll set up a program that allows more people to sort of dive into this sort of entrepreneurship. Whereas if more people were to select this one, where they're going to allow young people to have increased support through apprenticeship opportunities, co-op placements, and internships, obviously they're going to allow for huge amounts of funding to sort of flow to businesses that allow for this sort of co-op investment, so that more young people who are struggling to get into the job market will have more places to go that aren't requiring you to have 5 years experience before you've even had your first job. That's an awful trend. The next question they have here is, which of the following measures would you use to determine if Canada's economy is recovering from the effects of COVID-19, and to select all that apply. And of course, they list a number of things here, such as employment rates increasing, our gross domestic product increasing, the winding down of physical distancing measures, the value of the Canadian dollar, when you can actually see businesses in your community reopening, when you or your friends start to go back to full-time work, when you actually see improvements in your personal finance, you're able to save a bit more money, or some other way. Again, depending on what's selected, the government will kind of take this into consideration and maybe target that individual thing to be the number one priority that is talked about and focused on in this budget so that it can be successful in the eyes of Canadians. Next, they want to know what you think will be able to grow the most amount of jobs in Canada after COVID-19 has wrapped up. And they give you a number of options here, ranging from supporting scientific research, helping emerging companies scale up and grow, helping companies access new markets, addressing gender inequalities, support opportunities at all levels for racialized Canadians, providing incentives that encourage businesses to invest in clean tech, helping to make low carbon options more affordable, attracting foreign investors into Canada to help us grow our sectors like renewable energy, investing in training programs to help Canadians progress in their careers and prepare for jobs that we think the future is going to hold, more tech-based jobs likely, improving access to high-speed internet for Canadians, investing in manufacturing right here made in Canada, and investing in infrastructure to move goods and people efficiently around the country, both domestically and internationally. Again, that's a lot to take in and a lot of options there, and there's a lot to think about in each of these areas, but I think that the government is going to only prioritize a few of these, which is why it's so important for people to get in here and let them know what they think is most important. And just as a quick aside, I wanted to emphasize again that the decisions made in the process of creating this budget could determine where potentially billions of dollars are spent in Canada, and it's important that we think about where we need to spend that money to create the best country we possibly can to live in. That's why I think it's so important to keep up on this sort of stuff and to actually read these questionnaires and to voice your opinions, because it really is going to change the direction that Canada's moving for the rest of our lives. And if you're anybody who's collected any sort of benefit or EI or child benefit, these sort of benefits are included in this next question, and depending on what people answer, we could see more or less of them in the future. To give you context, the question is, what are the most important ways the Government of Canada can help to ensure an inclusive recovery that leaves no Canadian behind? And here are the answers that they've suggested that you can choose from. You can choose providing accessible and affordable early learning and childcare for all families, help with the cost of raising a family, making job-related training more affordable, improve income support programs so no Canadian worker has to worry how they will make ends meet if they lose their job or in between jobs. This sounds a lot like the benefits that people have been receiving throughout the pandemic. Continuing to invest in affordable housing, helping students reduce their student debt. This is something we've talked about on the channel as well. Reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, working to end systemic racism and address root causes of discrimination in Canada, support for the LGBTQ2 Canadians, ensuring Canadians can afford the medications they need, and of course other if you have something else. And depending on the decisions that get made here, there could be far-reaching impacts, right? Like if we see a ton of people sort of piling into these two options, then it's more likely that they're going to consider increasing the amount of childcare benefits that families can get to help raise children, as it's becoming more and more expensive to do so in the country down the current path that we're headed down. This is another big one too, helping students by reducing student debt, right? We've talked previously here on the channel about how if there was a way that we could significantly reduce student debt, how much better that could potentially be for the economy, because it would allow students who would otherwise be sort of burdened with huge amounts of debt, it would allow them the actual opportunity to start a business of themselves, or at least sort of push themselves more into the job market to help to stimulate the Canadian economy. There are lots of good arguments for that. I'll leave a link here so you can check out that video if you're more interested in that. And just to drive the point home, if we see a lot of people going into this sort of area, the improve income support, then we could see better programs in the future for people who lose their jobs to help them sort of get by. Now, this will be something that a lot of people who are big on UBI, Universal Basic Income, they would likely be voting for this sort of category because that's largely what they're pushing for, right? The ability to make sure that no Canadian worker has to worry how they will make ends meet if they lose their job or are between jobs. Now, the rest of the questionnaire has some spots that you can type in your own opinions about things so that they can sort of scan through that and see what's important to Canadians. But I'm sure you're realizing as we go through this that this sort of period when they're consulting the public, this could have a big impact. It could lead to certain benefits being cut and certain new benefits being created. And if this is something that you want your voice to be heard on, then I definitely recommend taking a look at it soon rather than later, because you'll see that consultations have already started and they're going to end February February 19th, 2021. But the key thing is here, they're talking about the findings of these surveys in these ministerial roundtables where they're talking to other stakeholders. So I would recommend getting your submissions in as soon as possible so that they know what's actually important for you to talk about. Now, after they stop collecting these submissions, we should expect to get a little bit more information about what's actually going to be included in the budget, and when the budget is released, we'll be able to go through that to find out exactly what is planned for our futures when it comes to the way Canada is going to use its money to make Canada a better place to live, ideally. But I will admit, a thought popped into my mind when I was reading this questionnaire. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here, and there's been a lot of talk about the Liberals maybe trying to push for an election in the spring. Wouldn't it be really beneficial for the Liberals to have the kind of data about what's most important to Canadians so that they can build a platform in which they would potentially win an election? Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what they're going to use this data for, but that's just something that entered my mind, so think of that what you will. But I'm curious about what you think of these questions and these answers. Do you think that they cover all of the most important topics and the most important areas that the government needs to be helping Canadians in? Or did they miss the mark entirely and you think that money should be sent to some other people for some other reason? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, feel free to hop into our community Discord. There's a link down in the description, and there's tons of people hopping in every day having discussions about just this sort of stuff. And if you like the video and you appreciate Canadian content like this, the number one thing you can do to support the channel is to share this video with someone who you think might also enjoy it. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.